Hello and welcome to Big Rig Banter, a show about all things commercial driving and transportation related. I'm your co-host Connor Smith.
And I'm your co-host Troy Diffenderfer.
The date is March 1st, 2017. This is Big Rig Banter.
Whether you're hitting the road or kicking back in the cab, it's time to take a load off with Big Rig Banter. Powered by alltruckjobs.com, your source for finding the trucking jobs drivers really want. Get ready to shift into gear and let the conversations roll.
All right, hello and welcome. So just to start things off here, this is the first show in the series, and it's going to be a wacky ride with us because we are two people who have never driven trucks in our lives. I can't even drive a stick shift, to be honest.
Me neither.
But that's why we're here. We're going to learn about the industry and help guide the conversation on the future, the past, and the present state of a lot of these topics. Today, our show is going to center around trucking schools and taking the first steps to starting your journey as a driver. So we're going to be effectively putting ourselves in the place of students who are considering becoming commercial drivers and going through the process of gaining their CDLs now, or as you probably all know, commercial driver's license. We're going to cover things like job outlook, license types, schooling, some pros and cons and different types of schools, the costs, as well as the overall process of the education. But first, we're going to open it up with some industry news. According to a new report by Navigant Research, the global annual electrified powertrain medium and heavy-duty truck sales are expected to grow from 31,000 vehicles in 2016 to nearly 332,000 by 2026. The report segments these sales by each electrified powertrain type, including hybrid, plug-in hybrid, battery electric, and hydrogen fuel cells from now until 2026.
And that's interesting you say that. As the trucking industry changes, we're going to see this kind of move from diesel and fuel to electric. So it's interesting to see as these different emissions and different testing and regulations come about. It's going to be interesting to see kind of the future of trucking. And luckily we have written a few articles on our trucking website, alltruckjobs.com, that we're going to be able to kind of give you guys some predictions what the future is going to look like, whether it's in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and as local and national governments continue to impose these stricter emissions targets for commercial vehicles, they're also trying to find ways to incentivize fleets to invest in medium and heavy-duty fuel efficiency technologies, as well as these cleaner burning fuels. So it's going to be an interesting balance between keeping drivers on the road and actually being a cost-efficient fleet when these technologies are rolled out fully. And some of the essential features of these trucks and these vehicles, it's that they're safer generally. They're supposed to be safer. They have these technologies that can tell when other vehicles are around them. They can link up to, satellites and other space computers and so on and so forth. And it's going to be a lot to take in the future, but we're going to keep covering it here. I think this is going to be a topic that is kind of perennial, as far as the industry is concerned.
Yeah, and speaking of safety, one of the biggest, I think, safety factors that many truckers forget is actually the wind. And unfortunately, this past month, a driver in Maryland, Joseph Chen, was actually blown off of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel around 12:30 on February 9th. And of course, our thoughts go out to Joseph Chen and his friends and family, but that's just another kind of factor that many don't think about. As we enter the month of March, this time of year is known as one of the windiest seasons. And while it might be great for parasailers or those who want to fly kites, wind advisories are no joke. Guys, it's really something to keep in mind when you're going over bridges or windy areas, especially if you're driving close to cliffs and kind of dangerous portions of the road. Wind can really affect your rig as you're traveling.
And it's, you're supposed to reduce your speed by 1/3 of the posted speed limit when the weather is bad, and that includes high wind. Even though it's kind of, it's invisible otherwise, it's not something you think about as being a bad weather condition, but for truckers, it is because your trailer is a gigantic sail, that can just be pushed over at any point in time.
Yeah, and as far as danger and kind of bridges, there was also a study just posted according to an analysis by the U.S. Department of Transportation's 2016 National Bridge Inventory by the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. 9% of bridges throughout the United States need significant repairs, which is honestly scary, as thousands and millions of people commute over bridges every day, and to know that 1 out of every 10 bridge is kind of deemed unsafe. Yeah, in 2016, nearly 56,000 bridges were deemed structurally deficient, with the highest percent of structurally deficient bridges being found kind of in the northeast area, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. The interstate highway system alone, 1,900 bridges were structurally deficient, with thousands of others being identified as needing significant reconstruction. And that's a scary thing to think about. I know you truckers constantly are traveling over bridges and traveling over these different roads, so it's important to kind of know what the government and what our roadway system is doing to repair those.
Okay, so now for our final news topic of the day. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or the FMCSA, begins their annual drug testing survey. They've begun notifying selected truck and bus companies that they will be required to submit their 2016 U.S. DOT drug and alcohol testing program results within 60 days, as directed by Federal Regulations CFR 382.403.
Yeah, and we realize this may be a hassle for many people. Obviously, it takes a while to get all this information. Many trucking companies kind of complain about it, obviously, getting drug information from all their employees, sending it in, filling out the paperwork, stuff like that. But in the long run, it really helps your trucking company. Obviously, you want safe practices and you want clean truckers.
And, the carrier is notified by the FMCSA that they've been selected to complete the annual survey are required to respond by March 15th, 2017, and failure to respond may result in civil penalties. If you guys have any more questions about this, you can go contact the FMCSA at fmcsadrugandalcohol@dot.gov or call 202-366-4844. Okay, and we'll be right back after this quick break.
Wherever the job takes you, Big Rig Banter is here to bring you the latest in industry topics, trends, and more. Stay tuned after this short break.
All right, welcome back to Big Rig Banter. Our main story today is going to be covering the process and nuances of becoming a truck driver, getting your CDL, going through the education process and everything that's involved with that. So to start, we're just going to talk a little bit about the industry demand for jobs, truck jobs. According to the American Trucking Association's 2015 driver shortage analysis, over the past 15 years, the trucking industry has periodically struggled with a shortage of truck drivers. The first shortage was documented in 2005, back when the shortage was roughly 20,000 drivers. And then after the last recession in 2008, the shortage was eliminated, essentially, as industry volumes plummeted. So still not a good alternative, but it wasn't until 2011 that industry volumes really began to recover, and thus the shortage returned. So the driver market then continued to tighten, and shortages skyrocketed to 38,000 by 2014. And according to this same report, the driver shortage is projected to reach 100,000 drivers this year.
And that's interesting you say that, Connor, because I remember reading the report, and the report comments that it's actually not a quantity issue, but it's in fact a quality issue, which I think was really interesting. A lot of these carriers have really strict hiring criteria based on driving history, and it kind of shows that maybe not everyone's getting the right schooling, or maybe not everyone's cut out for a driving job, and that's kind of something we're going to go over later in the show, and as well as when we talk to Aaron Slagle, kind of what the best route to take is, no pun intended, to
I think there should be.
to driving school.
Yeah, and so, over the next decade, the trucking industry will need to hire actually 890,000 new drivers, or an average of 89,000 per year. So the sooner that you start training and gaining experience, the sooner you'll have access to these jobs, higher paying positions, and you'll be part of that 89,000, hopefully, as time goes on.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty easy to get your CDL. I know you were doing research, what kind of forms and pieces of information you need. So what all do you need? I know you just need your name and phone number and you're good to go, right?
Not quite. No, you need a few other things. You're going to need first your personal driver's license, so just a standard one to drive, a car. And that's just basically to show that you understand the main rules of the road as they are. You're going to need a social security card, your birth certificate, a valid passport or a green card. You don't need all of those things necessarily, but just enough legal information to show that you have the ability to be working in the country.
And you have to be at least 18, don't you?
In some states, yes, with sometimes 1 to 2 years of personal driving experience before that. Driving interstate, though, or transporting hazardous materials or waste requires the individual to be about 21 years at least. So, the overall requirements that you're going to need on a very basic level, personal identification, proof of citizenship. You have to meet certain health standards. There are language requirements, so that just means essentially having a working knowledge of English so you can understand official direction and you can read road signs, etc. You'll take written tests, take your practical and road tests, and then, of course, just be of age to do so.
All right, so starting with a Class A CDL license, drivers can operate vehicles with a gross vehicle weight, or GVWR, of more than 26,000 pounds and a rear portion or a trailer weighing more than 10,000 pounds. Drivers with this Class A license usually have a lot of flexibility as to what type of other vehicles they can operate, including B and C commercial vehicles. This is kind of the catch-all be-all of license types, so if you're looking to be able to haul whatever you want, this is the way to go. The only thing to consider is what special endorsements or restrictions may apply to those other vehicle types in your state. For truckers looking to drive interstate highways, a Class A CDL is the standard. And now going to CDL Class B, getting a Class B license will allow drivers to operate commercial vehicles with a GVWR of 26,000 pounds, although the towed portion must weigh less than 10,000 pounds. For drivers who specialize in intrastate short hauls or commercial deliveries, that means within the state, a Class B CDL is an adequate license type. This type of license will allow drivers to operate Class C vehicles pending on any additional endorsements or training requirements. All right, and now for CDL Class C licenses. Class C CDLs essentially cover the remaining types of commercial vehicles which fall within the framework set by the FMCSA. This licensing applies specifically to vehicles designed to transport more than 15 people and those that are placarded against hazardous materials, waste, toxins, and other select agents. For drivers operating under a Class C license, each individual is held responsible for making sure they have the necessary endorsements on their CDL. Additionally, the tonnage of the vehicle during transport is what will be used to determine class and how closely someone is adhering to the FMCSA's regulations. And now finally, we're going to hit on some of the types of specialties that go beyond a CDL. These are not necessarily CDL licenses, but they are specialties that you might want to look into. Of course, a CDL will not cover all of the many types of vehicles out there. Those designed for military, emergency, construction, funeral service, and food delivery, or recreational purposes don't necessarily fall under a commercial licensing. Again, this is something that each individual state works with the FMCSA to agree on, so these are some specialties that you certainly want to look into.
kind of hinging on the types of licenses that are available. There are specific endorsements and restrictions, each with their own code. So essentially, when you take these additional courses, you'll then receive a code on your license that it's a national federal code that authorities can look at, and they can determine whether or not you are authorized to be operating such a vehicle. So, for instance, you'll have endorsement code T. So essentially what that allows is double and triple trailers, or maybe you'll have the P endorsement code, which just allows you to transport passengers. There are several endorsement codes, and the restriction codes work in a similar way. So again, you'll just get a letter on your license that indicates variations on your license, and if you'd like to go look up what those are specifically, you can go to the FMCSA's website, and they will all be listed there in a nice table format.
All right, now it's time to go back to school. Connor, are you excited?
Absolutely.
Are you having flashbacks of wedgies and swirlies right now?
Only giving them to other people.
Nice. All right, so there's 3 basic types of trucking schools: community colleges, technical schools, or private trucking schools, or schools operated by the specific trucking companies themselves. Each has characteristics, so you'll need to evaluate what type of school is best for you, and that's what we're here to help you do.
So some of the main things that vary, the length of training programs, they can last anywhere from a few weeks to 6 months. Community colleges are generally less expensive, but private schools may offer faster completion rates with more flexibility in enrollment schedules. Community colleges may also offer more advanced facilities, since campuses are developed and supported by the state in most cases. So private schools provide training that is often results-oriented. These schools also offer financial aid and job placement assistance, and at that point we kind of get into the company-sponsored school area. So essentially what's going on there is these company-sponsored schools will pay most, if not all, of the upfront costs of training, and then the student will reimburse their employer upon graduation. So essentially when they graduate, they work for a period of time as a driver for the company that has sponsored their education. And that's a good way to avoid upfront costs, though it does require a lot of dedication and understanding the financial commitment of that, because if you went through the training and then didn't get hired or decided to do something different, you would still be locked in contractually to paying that company, and it could get pretty expensive just because of the liability of them sponsoring the school in the first place and having you graduate or not. But costs generally are going to range anywhere from $1,000 to $7,000, with any additional courses for things like endorsements adding to these costs. You'll also have to consider, in some places, renting a truck for your test. So that can be another additional $150. I'm sure there are ways to get cheaper, rentals as a student or something like that. So.
And luckily there is financial aid. There's several different options, actually. For those looking to help pay for trucking school, there are scholarships, grants, and loans that are specifically designed for this purpose. Most people will start by applying for a free application for federal student aid, which is FAFSA. Many traditional school students or college students will apply for this as well, and it also pertains to trucking schools also, which works for technical schools, colleges, and CDL schools with the right requirements. Eligibility for FAFSA also determines whether you're able to receive the Pell Grant for CDL schools, lasting a minimum of 24 weeks. And consider finding a company-sponsored training program as well, like we talked about. Some may actually pay for you to get your certification, which is also a bonus.
Yeah, and this can seem like an overwhelming process, so I took the time to put together a blog kind of detailing the different things you're going to want to think about when looking for a trucking school, how to pay for your education, as well as what you're going to want to look for in instructors and other things like that. So you can check that out on our blog at alltruckjobs.com.
And now that you mention our website, we are actually in the process of putting together a resource that will provide state-based information on the CDL application process. So be sure to look out for that within the next few months.
Yeah, and we have a lot of cool things on our blog and our website. Speaking of which, I recently put together a post entitled Batman versus Superman, who would make a better driver?
The ultimate throwdown.
Yeah, and so we asked everybody in the office here at All Truck Jobs, and it was pretty split, 50-50. People didn't really know whose side to take or who would make the better trucker, so Troy and I have presented both of our arguments in this blog, which you can go check out on our website, but we're going to reiterate a little bit of it right here for you. So first off, Troy, why do you think Batman would make a superior trucker to a space god?
Well, I think he would make a superior trucker just because of his abilities as a businessman. I know we're talking about a single trucker, but he will have the ability to transport his own goods. He'll also provide different jobs for other truckers as well. Superman is one guy who you claim he can do a lot, but he's going to wreak havoc on the driver shortage. If one man is taking away hundreds of thousands of jobs, that's going to play a big impact, Connor. You can't disagree with me there.
That's a good point. It's a good point. But I think it's really what the conversation is about is who between the two men would make a more fit hire. Who would you rather hire to be a trucker? If they both walked into your office and were like, "We'd like to work for you." I think the choice is obvious that Superman is the superior candidate. For one, because basically, he doesn't need to sleep, doesn't need to eat. He basically cannot die. So right there, he's a much more reliable specimen than a human man.
That is true. That's true.
So there's that. Also, he grew up on a farm, so he's got a lot of really great work ethic. He knows his way around heavy machinery. He knows that part of the industry, and not to get too specific here, but Superman can lift, what is it, 200 billion tons? So right there, all you got to do is make one run for the year, and you can basically get all of your shipping done. Just like that, snap of the finger.
I agree, but we're talking about who's the better driver. If two guys walk into my office and one guy has experience behind the wheel, Batman's driving the Batmobile every night, he's riding motorcycles, he knows his way around different vehicles. We don't even know if Superman has a driver's license. We're not talking about who can fly and carry the most stuff as a trucker. We're talking about who we want behind the wheel of our vehicle when they're trekking cross country, who has the experience behind the wheel, and who's going to be able to get the job done.
That is true, but, isn't it at the end of the day about getting things from A to B as cost efficiently and safely as possible? And I would say that maybe he doesn't need to drive a truck to be a fantastic transportation professional.
Yeah, but that's the transportation industry. We're
Well,
talking about
trucking is.
the trucking industry, solely the trucking industry right now. And I want someone who's got experience behind the wheel.
So check this out, though. Even if he was driving a truck, does Batman have laser vision? He can just laser ice off the road for surrounding vehicles.
He's got
Does
tons
he-
of gadgets that'll take care of all that. He's got...
Yeah, but gadgets break. Superman doesn't break. He just lives forever, and he's worth probably about 1,000 Batmans in terms of longevity and really just moral character too. I think Batman's so conflicted. He beats people within an inch of their lives all the time, just trying to make a profit. And Superman, he's just a good guy. He's just a journalist he's actually trying to stay out of trouble most of the time.
That is true, but he does have a known weakness. If he's hauling kryptonite, he's done for. So we don't know if any villains are going to slip some kryptonite into that cargo hold.
That's true. On that same note, he has X-ray vision too, so he can tell if there's any cargo theft going on. He can find criminals that way. So, you're getting two birds stoned at once with that one. Essentially, you can catch bad guys in the act, and you can also just make a nice pretty penny on that Superman investment.
All right. Well, I think we can agree to disagree,
Yeah.
but I think we can continue this conversation another day. And if you have another opinion, we want to hear about it on who the better trucker is between Batman or Superman. So feel free to leave us a comment below, message us on Facebook, or tweet at us at AllTruckJobsUSA. All right, and now we want to shed the spotlight on some of the more lighthearted stories that we've posted on our blog as of late. This one is covering some of the 10 craziest cargo spills in recent memories. So Connor and I are going to kind of highlight a few. And if you want to see the full list, feel free to go to our blog at alltruckjobs.com.
So the first crazy cargo spill is 900 bottles of beer on the wall, or actually more like 2,184 cases of beer on a Canadian highway. A Molson truck carrying some alcoholic cargo overturned in Mississauga, Ontario, after a woman swerved into the beer truck, causing it to overturn and spill thousands of gallons of beer onto the roadway. Luckily, all parties were unharmed, and the driver of the truck was fortunately not drinking his cargo at the time.
That is fortunate.
Very fortunate, but good waste of beer right there.
All right, I see your beer, and I will raise you some outlaw hogs. 2,200 piglets were released onto an Ohio interstate when a truck carrying them overturned. Luckily, almost all piglets were able to be captured by authorities, but the few piglets that did escape went on to lead a life of crime as outlawed piglets.
And what do outlaw piglets do as their new criminal selves?
They form an outlaw piglet posse.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds intimidating, but perhaps not as much as a gigantic whale exploding in Taiwan. How about that one? This happened when officials were transporting a beached whale for an autopsy when the unexpected happened. It looked like a horror movie after the 56-foot mammoth exploded after gases built up inside of the body of the mammal.
And we have pictures to prove it. If you want to see that, check out the blog. We have a pretty gruesome picture of the aftermath.
It's very disgusting. It's just like a big old purple-red jelly soup covering the street. That's an exploded whale for you, though, and it's something everyone should see in their lifetime, if not only through pictures.
All right, well, let's work up your appetite after that one. Recently in Indiana, 40,000 pounds of Edie's ice cream overturned, spilling Rocky Road flavored ice cream all over the roadway. It took 6 hours to clean up the various gallons of different ice cream, and nobody was harmed during the accident.
Talk about a rocky road, though.
That's true.
Okay, and this has been the first episode of Big Rig Banter. Thank you all for listening. Join us next time, and we're going to be talking about getting your first trucking job, resume advice, interview tips, and all of that good stuff to nail it on the first day. And if you're looking for trucking jobs right now, head over to alltruckjobs.com and you can apply for various license types and jobs found throughout the United States. I'm your co-host, Connor Smith.
And I'm Troy Diffenderfer.
And this has been Big Rig Banter.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Big Rig Banter. For your next job, check out alltruckjobs.com, the premier online source for finding the best driver jobs in the country. Browse hundreds of positions by freight or driver type to get back on the road with confidence. Click subscribe to keep the conversations coming. Until next time on Big Rig Banter.